Karen strutted across the lawn in hard heels, the kind that announced every step like a hammer striking concrete. She didn't bother to knock on Evan's door. Instead, she stood by his porch, arms folded, voice already raised. "We need a survey done. Your fence is on my land. I want it removed." Evan stepped outside slowly, wiping soil from his hands as if he had been expecting her. His eyes held a calm that irritated Karen more than any argument could. She thrived on conflict, needed it in fact, and his quietness felt like mockery. He didn't argue. He simply said, "Fine. Let's measure everything, properly." She scoffed, thinking she had already won. The neighborhood had heard about their dispute. Some whispered about lawsuits and police involvement. Others just wanted the drama. Karen believed she would soon triumph, and that this calm, solitary man next door would need to bow to her. By midday, Evan returned with high-grade surveying equipment, the kind professionals used for criminal investigations. Karen rolled her eyes, mocking him for being dramatic. But when he began placing markers into the soil, the mood changed. He didn't look at her. He worked like someone who had done this before, methodically, like a surgeon. Step by step, he traced invisible lines. Karen felt uneasy for the first time. She tried to distract herself by talking on the phone loudly, claiming she was getting legal advice, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Evan noticed. But he kept working. The sun sat high, blazing down on the grass. As he completed the survey, neighbors started to appear at windows, poking through curtains, secretly anticipating an argument. Karen stood with false confidence, arms crossed, waiting for his defeat. And then he looked at her, not with victory, but with something sharper. He handed her the survey papers. She glanced quickly, then slower, then stopped breathing for a moment. The document was clear. 30% of her beloved yard, the garden she bragged about, the gazebo she hosted parties in, wasn't hers at all. Legally, it belonged to Evan. Her hands shook. "This has to be wrong," she snapped. "You manipulated something." "I know you did." He stepped closer, not threatening, but firm. "Everything is accurate," he said. "You demanded the truth. Now it's on paper." There was no smugness, no gloating. But something in his eyes unnerved her. For the first time, she didn't want to fight. She wanted to retreat. Yet her pride was too heavy to let her step back. She accused him again, louder this time. He remained silent. That silence enraged her more than any insult. She wanted him to shout, to argue, anything. Instead, he whispered barely above the breeze, "Some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed." She felt cold despite the heat. A shiver crawled up her spine, and she suddenly sensed that this conflict was no longer about land. It wasn't even about legality. It was about something much deeper, something that might have already begun before she realized it. That afternoon, Karen walked back to her house, survey papers crumpled in her fist. For the first time, she wasn't sure whether she had won anything at all, or if she had just stepped into a game that Evan had never truly lost. The night came down like a curtain, silent and thick, smothering the neighborhood in fog. Willow Creek was the kind of place where shadows felt like they watched you, and tonight, Karen felt it more than ever. She couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the survey results over and over, the red measurements, the signatures, the fact that her gazebo legally belonged to Evan. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his calm expression. Not triumphant, just quietly certain, like a man who had already accepted something she hadn't yet understood. At 2:13 a.m., a sound echoed outside. A deep thud, like wood splitting under pressure. She shot up from bed, heart hammering, and ran to the window. Through the mist, she saw movement in her yard, no, his yard, technically. Evan was there under the pale moonlight, dismantling the gazebo board by board. A demolition order pinned to his jacket confirmed it, this was legal. She stormed outside barefoot, still in her nightdress. "You can't do this," she shouted. "You can't just take things because of a piece of paper." The cold air stung her throat. Her words sounded small against the night. Evan didn't argue. He simply continued unscrewing the wooden frames, his motion slow, precise, like a surgeon. She rushed forward and struck his shoulder. The sound froze the air. He caught her wrist before she could strike again. Not violently, just firmly. Their eyes locked. In the moonlight, she saw something dangerous in his gaze, but also something that didn't feel like hatred. It was harder to name. Harder to resist. "Let go," she hissed, though her voice shook. His grip softened, yet his eyes remained steady. "This isn't revenge," he said. "I'm just taking back what was always mine." That sentence lingered in the air, heavy as smoke. She felt something shift inside her, something unfamiliar, somewhere between anger and longing. The workers had left. The fog thickened. It was just them. For a moment, time didn't move. She looked at him again, really looked, and saw not a neighbor, not an enemy, but a man who never raised his voice yet always seemed to win. It terrified her how much she wanted to understand him. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was too gentle for the situation, too intimate for enemies. Her breath caught. She didn't pull away. She didn't want to. His voice lowered. "You act like I'm taking something from you, but maybe I'm just revealing what you already lost long ago." The words stunned her. They felt more invasive than any survey, harsher than any law. She turned away, trembling, unsure whether she was afraid of him, or of herself. The gazebo lay in pieces behind her, like an altar dismantled after a forgotten prayer. As she walked back to her house, she felt his eyes on her, not threatening, but waiting. Not the end of a fight, perhaps the beginning of something else entirely. And in that quiet, fog-covered yard, something darker than property dispute had just begun. 3 days passed. Willow Creek had never felt quieter. Karen's house stood dark at night, no lights, no footsteps, no music from the garden. The town had started whispering. Some said she went on a trip. Others said she was hiding after losing the property dispute. But every rumor felt hollow. Everyone sensed something was wrong, and everything pointed toward one house. Evans. That evening, Officer Grant arrived for a casual check-in. No official warrant, just suspicion disguised as concern. He knocked, no answer. But Evan eventually opened the door, slow and calm, just like always. His eyes looked tired, but not frightened. His clothes were casual. His hands clean. Not a trace of worry. Instead, there was a softness to him, almost peace. Grant asked a few questions. Evan responded politely. No resistance. No panic. But something felt too perfect, too prepared. Then, a sound came from the basement. Faint, almost electrical. A hum, followed by a low thud. Grant paused. Evan noticed. But instead of explaining, Evan simply said, "Would you like to see it?" No hesitation. No fear. Something about his voice felt rehearsed, as if he'd been waiting to say that line. The basement was dim, yet carefully arranged. Survey maps pinned to the walls. Photos of land measurements. In the center, a single table with 2 wine glasses, the aroma of red wine still fresh. But only one of them bore lipstick. A soft female laugh echoed in Grant's memory, the laugh he heard 3 nights earlier, faintly, from outside his window. He didn't realize it until now, it came from this house. He saw it then, the new boundary line drawn on the floor, thick red chalk marking 2 zones. On one side, maps, tools, paperwork. On the other, a neatly made bed. Pillows. Blankets. A folded dress. Karen's dress. She emerged moments later, from behind a curtain. Not tied up. Not bruised. Calm. Dressed in a shirt that wasn't hers. Eyes soft, as though she had just woken from a long sleep. Grant expected her to ask for help. Or whisper for rescue. But she just stood beside Evan silently, like they'd practiced it. The silence was unsettling. She said only one sentence, "I was always on his land. I just didn't see it before." Grant didn't know what to write in his report. There was no crime he could name. No bruises. No confession. The woman he thought was missing stood right in front of him, but looked less free than ever. Evan's hand gently touched her back, not dominance, not force, but possession. And she didn't resist it. She leaned into it. When Grant left the house, he took one last look at the boundary line. Something told him nobody would ever cross it again, not police, not law, not Karen. Later, his final report contained only 3 words. Case voluntarily closed. And in Evan's basement, beyond all legal boundaries, love and captivity quietly became the same thing.